Culture and Value by Ludwig Wittgenstein. Quotes. Ludwig Wittgenstein's Culture and Value presents an intricate examination of the intersection between philosophy, aesthetics, and human values. Compiled from his personal notes and reflections, the book delves into themes of art, religion, and the human condition through a distinctly Wittgensteinian lens, characterized by his unique approach to language and thought. In these reflections, Wittgenstein offers a critique of Western civilization and its values, often contrasting them with his own ideals of simplicity and integrity. Quote 1. "What is good is also divine. Queer as it sounds, that sums up my ethics. Only something supernatural can express the supernatural." This quote encapsulates Wittgenstein's view that goodness is not simply a human construct, but something that transcends the realm of the ordinary. He associates the concept of good with the divine, suggesting that the highest form of goodness cannot be expressed through mere facts or human experience, but only through something that is beyond nature, something supernatural. This connection between ethics and the divine forms a core part of Wittgenstein's philosophical outlook, reflecting his belief in the profound mystery of life and morality. Quote 2. "You cannot lead people to what is good. You can only lead them to some place or other. The good is outside the space of facts." Here Wittgenstein suggests that goodness is not something that can be taught or led towards in a straightforward manner. Instead, he implies that what is good exists beyond the realm of practical reality, facts, and teaching. The statement reflects his belief that ethics and morality are not like knowledge that can be imparted directly. They exist outside the concrete world of facts, making the journey towards understanding them a deeply personal and individual experience. Quote 3. "Each morning, you have to break through the dead rubble afresh so as to reach the living, warm seed." This metaphor reflects Wittgenstein's philosophical process of continuously cutting through superficial ideas or stale thinking, dead rubble, in order to find the essence or core truth, warm seed. It emphasizes the daily challenge of engaging deeply with one's thoughts, suggesting that philosophical or meaningful understanding is not readily accessible, but requires persistent effort to move beyond surface-level distractions. Quote 4. "If there were a solution to the problems of logic, philosophy, we should only need to caution ourselves that there was a time when they had not been solved. And even at that time, people must have known how to live and think." Wittgenstein is skeptical of the notion that philosophical problems, particularly in logic, have definitive solutions. He points out that even before these problems were framed or solved, people still lived and thought effectively. The quote implies that the pursuit of answers in philosophy may not lead to a final solution, but rather that life and thought can proceed without absolute clarity, and this does not detract from their validity. Quote 5. "No one can think a thought for me, in the way no one can don my hat for me." This quote highlights Wittgenstein's view of the deeply personal nature of thought. Just as wearing a hat is an individual action, thinking is a personal activity that cannot be transferred or done by someone else. It emphasizes his belief in the autonomy of thought, and suggests that philosophical understanding must be reached independently, as no one else can do the thinking for another person. Quote 6. "The tragedy is where the tree, instead of bending, breaks." Wittgenstein offers a vivid image of tragedy, symbolizing rigidity as the downfall of individuals or ideas. Instead of adapting to pressures by bending, the tree that breaks represents something or someone who refuses to yield, leading to destruction. This conveys a subtle philosophical stance on the need for flexibility in the face of life's challenges to avoid collapse or failure. Quote 7. "I once said, perhaps rightly, the earlier culture will become a heap of rubble, and finally a heap of ashes, but spirits will hover over the ashes." Wittgenstein reflects on the inevitable decay of culture, suggesting that even when the tangible aspects of a civilization fade away, the intangible, such as ideas, spirits, or legacies, will remain. He expresses a belief that while cultural artifacts may not last forever, the essence of the people and their thoughts transcends physical destruction, continuing to influence the future in subtle ways. Quote 8. It is a great temptation to try to make the spirit explicit. Wittgenstein acknowledges the challenge in making the deeper essence or spirit of things fully clear or overt. The temptation to do so often arises in intellectual pursuits, yet the attempt to explicitly define or capture this essence can lead to frustration or reduction. Wittgenstein implies that some aspects of human experience, especially those involving spirituality or deep understanding, resist full articulation. Quote 9. When you bump against the limits of your own honesty, it is as though your thoughts get into a whirlpool, an infinite regress. You can say what you like, it takes you no further. This reflects Wittgenstein's idea that intellectual or moral integrity sometimes confronts boundaries that lead to mental entanglement. At certain points, continuing to reason through a situation only leads to circular or self-defeating thoughts. This image of a whirlpool highlights the endless struggle of grappling with difficult truths or paradoxes, where verbal attempts to resolve issues seem futile. Quote 10. If someone is merely ahead of his time, it will catch him up one day. Wittgenstein reflects on the notion of being ahead of one's time, suggesting that while a person's ideas or actions may seem too advanced for the present, eventually time will catch up to them. This suggests a cyclical or evolutionary view of human progress, where ideas initially dismissed or misunderstood may eventually be validated or appreciated as society evolves. Quote 11. Some people think music a primitive art because it has only a few notes and rhythms, but it is only simple on the surface. Its substance, on the other hand, which makes it possible to interpret this manifest content, has all the infinite complexity that's suggested in the external forms of other arts, and that music conceals. Wittgenstein argues that while music may seem simple in its basic elements, its underlying structure is far more complex than it appears. He contrasts the apparent simplicity of musical notes and rhythms with the deep, often hidden, complexity of interpretation and emotional resonance, suggesting that music may, in fact, be the most sophisticated of the arts. Quote 12. What you have achieved cannot mean more to others than it does to you. Whatever it has cost you, that's what they will pay. This statement suggests that personal achievements carry subjective value. The emotional and intellectual investment someone makes in their work determines its value to others. Wittgenstein is highlighting that external appreciation of an accomplishment is directly proportional to the effort and sacrifice of the individual behind it. Quote 13. We are engaged in a struggle with language. Wittgenstein sees language as both a tool and a constraint in expressing thoughts. This simple yet profound statement reflects his lifelong philosophical exploration of how language shapes, limits, and sometimes fails to capture the complexities of human experience. It underscores his belief that philosophical problems often arise from the limitations inherent in language itself. Quote 14. The solution of philosophical problems can be compared with a gift in a fairy tale. In the magic castle, it appears enchanted, and if you look at it outside in daylight, it is nothing but an ordinary bit of iron. This quote captures Wittgenstein's skepticism toward the supposed solutions to philosophical problems. He suggests that solutions, when examined under close scrutiny, may lose their apparent magic or profundity, revealing themselves to be more mundane than initially thought. It reflects his belief that philosophical inquiry often reveals deeper complexities, which may diminish simplistic answers. Quote 15. Nothing we do can be defended absolutely and finally, but only by reference to something else that is not questioned. This quote reflects Wittgenstein's view on the nature of justifications and reasoning. He points out that actions or decisions cannot be defended in isolation. They require a reference point, something accepted without question. In other words, every justification rests on assumptions or values that are themselves not questioned, creating a chain of reasoning that never reaches an absolute or ultimate foundation. Quote 16. The work in philosophy is, like work in architecture in many respects, really more a working on oneself, on one's own interpretation, on one's way of seeing things. Wittgenstein likens philosophical work to a personal journey of self-refinement, much like an architect perfects a design. The task of philosophy, for him, is not about constructing theoretical systems, but about altering how one sees the world. It is a deeply introspective process that involves clarifying and reshaping one's perceptions and expectations of reality. Quote 17. Perhaps what is inexpressible, what I find mysterious, and am not able to express, is the background against which whatever I could express has its meaning. Wittgenstein suggests that the unspoken or inexpressible elements of experience provide the essential context for the things we can articulate. What cannot be expressed, the mysterious aspects of life, shapes the meaning of what we do express. This highlights his belief in the limits of language, and the idea that meaning is often derived from what remains unsaid. Quote 18. I really do think with my pen, because my head often knows nothing about what my hand is writing. Wittgenstein reveals his relationship with writing as a spontaneous process, where the act of writing leads his thinking rather than being a mere recording of preformed ideas. This illustrates the subconscious or instinctive nature of creativity and intellectual work, where thoughts emerge in the process of writing itself, sometimes surprising even the writer. Quote 19. The philosophers are often like little children who scribble some marks on a piece of paper at random and then ask the grown-up, "What's that?" This analogy portrays philosophers as people who often create concepts or ideas without fully understanding their own creation, and then turn to others for interpretation. Wittgenstein critiques the tendency to seek meaning or answers in philosophy without first thoroughly understanding the problem or question being posed, highlighting a gap between intellectual creation and comprehension. Quote 20. What a Copernicus or a Darwin really achieved was not the discovery of a true theory, but of a fertile new point of view. Wittgenstein emphasizes that revolutionary thinkers like Copernicus and Darwin did not simply uncover new facts, but introduced new perspectives that reshaped how people understood the world. Their contributions lay in offering new ways of seeing, which in turn opened up new areas of thought and investigation, rather than providing final, unchangeable truths. Quote 21. A confession has to be a part of your new life. Wittgenstein views confession not merely as an admission of wrongdoing, but as an integral part of personal transformation. It is only meaningful if it leads to a new way of living, indicating a commitment to change. This reflects his broader belief in the inseparability of thought, language, and action, where true understanding or acknowledgement must translate into a lived experience. Quote 22. In art, it is hard to say anything as good as saying nothing. Wittgenstein reflects on the difficulty of expressing anything in art that matches the power of silence. He suggests that sometimes silence or the absence of expression can hold more meaning or truth than words or actions. This reflects his broader philosophy of valuing what is left unsaid and the limits of language in capturing the essence of things. Quote 23. Don't play with what lies deep in another person. Wittgenstein cautions against manipulating or toying with the innermost aspects of another person's mind or emotions. He implies that there is a sanctity or vulnerability in a person's depths that should be respected and not treated lightly. This reflects his sensitivity toward the integrity of personal inner experience. Quote 24. It is as impossible to view one's own character from outside as it is one's own handwriting. This quote highlights Wittgenstein's belief that self-perception is inherently biased. Just as one cannot objectively assess their own handwriting, one cannot view their own character from an external, detached perspective. This underscores the difficulty of achieving true self-awareness, or understanding without external input. Quote 25. Every artist has been influenced by others, and shows traces of that influence in his works. But his significance for us is nothing but his personality. Wittgenstein asserts that while every artist is shaped by the works of others, their true value lies in their unique personality. The influences may be present, but what resonates with the audience is the artist's individual expression, not the inherited aspects. He emphasizes the importance of originality and personal vision in creative work. Quote 26. The fact that life is problematic shows that the shape of your life does not fit into life's mold. So you must change the way you live, and once your life does fit into the mold, what is problematic will disappear. Wittgenstein suggests that life's difficulties stem from a misalignment between one's way of living and the larger structure of life itself. The solution is to adjust one's life until it fits into this structure, at which point the problems will naturally dissolve. He advocates for personal transformation as the means to resolve existential dilemmas. Quote 27. The delight I take in my thoughts is delight in my own strange life. Is this joy of living? Wittgenstein contemplates the nature of the pleasure he derives from his intellectual life, questioning whether this constitutes true joy. He recognizes that his thoughts are deeply intertwined with his unique, unconventional existence, but he remains uncertain whether this intellectual satisfaction equates to a fuller, more profound happiness. Quote 28. Ideas, too, sometimes fall from the tree before they are ripe. Wittgenstein likens ideas to fruit that can fall from a tree prematurely. Just as fruit may not be ready to eat, some ideas may emerge before they are fully formed or mature. This metaphor reflects his understanding that not all thoughts are ready for expression or use, and some may need more time to develop. Quote 29. Christianity is not a doctrine, a theory about what has happened and will happen to the human soul, but a description of something that actually takes place in human life. Wittgenstein emphasizes that Christianity, rather than being a theoretical system or speculative philosophy about the soul, is a reflection of real human experiences, such as the consciousness of sin, despair, and redemption. For him, these are not abstract concepts, but actual events in life, showing that religious beliefs are deeply tied to the human condition and should be understood as part of lived experience. Quote 30. Thinking, too, has a time for plowing and a time for gathering the harvest. Here Wittgenstein compares intellectual work to agriculture, suggesting that there are phases in thinking where one prepares, plants ideas, and later reaps the rewards of insight. It captures the cyclical nature of intellectual efforts, with periods of intense groundwork followed by the fruition of thoughts, indicating that not all thinking yields immediate results, but requires patience and cultivation. Quote 31. When something is well hidden, it is hard to find. Wittgenstein points to the difficulty of uncovering truths that are not readily apparent. This simple statement reflects his view of philosophical investigation. Deeply embedded problems or truths often require diligent searching and patience to uncover, as they are not obvious on the surface and can remain elusive for those who do not know where to look. Quote 32. Religion says, do this, think like that. But it cannot justify this, and once it even tries to, it becomes repellent. Wittgenstein criticizes the attempts of religion to provide rational justifications for its commandments and doctrines. He suggests that the power of religious belief lies in its ability to inspire certain actions or ways of thinking without needing to justify them logically. When religion attempts to provide reasons for its moral imperatives, it often loses its force, becoming unconvincing or even off-putting. Quote 33. The origin and the primitive form of the language game is a reaction. Only from this can more complicated forms develop. Wittgenstein explains that the most basic elements of language arise from simple, reactive uses, responses to situations or stimuli. From these primitive forms, more intricate and abstract forms of language evolve. This statement encapsulates his idea of language games, where language is seen as rooted in human interaction, gradually becoming more complex as society and communication develop. Quote 34. You cannot write anything about yourself that is more truthful than you yourself are. Wittgenstein asserts that self-writing is inherently limited by the truthfulness of the writer. One cannot write about themselves in a way that surpasses their own honesty or self-awareness. This reflects his belief that writing about oneself is grounded in personal integrity and self-perception. A writer can only convey the truth they are capable of understanding about themselves. Quote 35. Nothing is so difficult as not deceiving oneself. Wittgenstein emphasizes the profound challenge of self-deception. He suggests that it is not external obstacles, but the difficulty of being truly honest with oneself that poses the greatest challenge. The statement highlights the intricate nature of self-awareness, where it is easier to fool oneself than to confront uncomfortable truths head-on. Quote 36. The truth can be spoken only by someone who is already at home in it, not by someone who still lives in falsehood and reaches out from falsehood towards truth on just one occasion. Wittgenstein suggests that truth is not something one can casually touch upon. It requires a deep and ongoing engagement. Only someone who has immersed themselves in truth, who lives in accordance with it, can speak it authentically. Occasional glimpses or attempts to grasp the truth from a place of falsehood are insufficient. Quote 37. Resting on your laurels is as dangerous as resting when you are walking in the snow. You doze off and die in your sleep. This metaphor warns against complacency. Wittgenstein compares resting on past achievements to falling asleep in the snow. Both lead to dangerous consequences. Without continued effort, one risks stagnation or failure, suggesting that progress and vigilance are essential for survival and success. Quote 38. The measure of genius is character, even though character on its own does not amount to genius. Wittgenstein reflects on the nature of genius, suggesting that it is not simply talent or intellect, but the strength of character that defines it. While character alone may not be sufficient to make someone a genius, it is the essential element that shapes and directs talent in a meaningful way. Quote 39. One might say, genius is talent exercised with courage. This statement distills Wittgenstein's belief that genius is not merely about exceptional skill or intellect, but about the courage to apply that talent boldly and decisively. Courage is the driving force that allows talent to flourish and transform into something extraordinary. Quote 40. You can't be reluctant to give up your lie and still tell the truth. Wittgenstein asserts that truth and falsehood cannot coexist. One must be fully committed to abandoning lies in order to speak the truth. This reflects his broader philosophical view that living truthfully requires a total rejection of deception, both internally and externally. Quote 41. If this stone won't budge at present and is wedged in, move some of the other stones round it first. This metaphor illustrates Wittgenstein's approach to problem solving. If a direct solution to a problem is not possible, one should work on the surrounding elements, gradually loosening the situation until the central issue can be addressed. It underscores the importance of patience and indirect strategies in overcoming obstacles. Quote 42. You cannot draw the seed up out of the earth. All you can do is give it warmth and moisture and light. Then it must grow. Wittgenstein uses the metaphor of a seed to express the idea that growth and development cannot be forced. One can only provide the right conditions, support, and nurture, and allow the natural process to unfold. This applies to many aspects of life, such as personal growth, learning, and creative work, where patience and the right environment are essential for natural progress. Quote 43. a man will be imprisoned in a room with a door that's unlocked and opens inwards, as long as it does not occur to him to pull rather than push it. Wittgenstein points to the limitations of human thinking, where simple solutions are often overlooked because of ingrained habits or perspectives. This metaphor illustrates how we can remain trapped in a problem despite the solution being within reach, if we do not approach it from the right angle or with the right mindset. Quote 44. If you already have a person's love, no sacrifice can be too much to give for it, but any sacrifice is too great to buy it for you. Wittgenstein highlights the irreplaceable nature of genuine love, suggesting that once it is given, no effort to maintain it is excessive. However, love cannot be purchased or forced through any sacrifice. It must come freely. The statement underscores the distinction between love as a gift and love as something that cannot be coerced. Quote 45. What you are regarding as a gift is a problem for you to solve. This quote reflects Wittgenstein's belief that what we perceive as gifts or opportunities often come with challenges. Instead of seeing them as straightforward benefits, they require active engagement and resolution. He implies that the value of such gifts lies in the process of overcoming the difficulties they present. Quote 46. Genius is what makes us forget the master's talent. Wittgenstein defines genius as a quality that transcends technical skill or talent, making us overlook the mastery behind the work. Genius, in this sense, is the extraordinary force that captivates and absorbs us so deeply that we no longer notice the mechanics behind the creation. Quote 47. Put a man in the wrong atmosphere, and nothing will function as it should. He will seem unhealthy in every part. Wittgenstein suggests that context and environment are crucial to well-being and functionality. When someone is placed in an unsuitable environment, it affects every aspect of their life, making them appear out of place or unhealthy. This emphasizes the importance of finding the right setting for individuals to thrive. Quote 48. Is it some frustrated longing that makes a man mad? I was thinking of Schumann, but of myself too. Wittgenstein speculates that madness may arise from unfulfilled desires or aspirations. He reflects on the composer Schumann and his own experience, suggesting that deep, unresolved longings can lead to mental turmoil. This statement reveals his personal connection to the theme of unfulfilled ambitions and its potential psychological impact. Quote 49. That man will be revolutionary who can revolutionize himself. Wittgenstein suggests that true revolution begins within the individual. A person who can fundamentally change or transform themselves holds the power to bring about broader, external change. This reflects the idea that self-awareness and internal growth are the roots of significant external impact. Quote 50. People are religious to the extent that they believe themselves to be not so much imperfect as ill. Wittgenstein draws a distinction between feeling flawed and feeling deeply afflicted. He argues that religious individuals do not merely see themselves as imperfect, as most people do, but as profoundly broken or sick. This inner sense of wretchedness drives their need for spiritual healing and redemption. Quote 51. Believing means submitting to an authority. Having once submitted, you can't then, without rebelling against it, first call it in question, and then, once again, find it acceptable. Wittgenstein highlights the nature of belief as an act of submission to an authority. Once one has surrendered to this authority, questioning it would be a form of rebellion. This makes it impossible to challenge belief and then return to it without undergoing a profound internal conflict. Quote 52. The Christian religion is only for the man who needs infinite help. Solely, that is, for the man who experiences infinite torment. Wittgenstein argues that Christianity, in its deepest form, is for those who are in profound need, those who feel an unrelenting sense of despair or torment. The religion offers infinite salvation, but only for those who are acutely aware of their infinite need for it. Quote 53. No greater torment can be experienced than one human being can experience. Wittgenstein reflects on the intensity of individual suffering, suggesting that the depth of pain felt by a single person can reach its absolute limit. No collective or external suffering can surpass the anguish of one person's internal experience, making human suffering profoundly individual and absolute. Quote 54. A man can see what he has, but not what he is. Wittgenstein points out the difficulty people face in recognizing their true selves. It is easier to observe external possessions or accomplishments, but much harder to have a clear understanding of one's own being or essence. This observation underscores the complexity of self-awareness and identity. Quote 55. If people did not sometimes do silly things, nothing intelligent would ever get done. Wittgenstein suggests that human progress often stems from mistakes or foolish actions. Without occasional errors or experiments that may seem silly, true innovation or intelligence would never arise. This statement highlights the importance of risk-taking and trial and error in the process of learning and discovery. Quote 56. Sowing ideas is one thing, reaping ideas another. Wittgenstein highlights the difference between generating ideas and actually bringing them to fruition. Just as in agriculture, planting seeds does not immediately yield a harvest. Similarly, intellectual work requires time and effort before the ideas sown can be fully realized and understood. This reflects the patient, ongoing process of philosophical thinking. Quote 57. You could attach prices to thoughts. Some cost a lot, some a little. And how does one pay for thoughts? The answer, I think, is with courage. Here, Wittgenstein suggests that thoughts and ideas have different values, and their worth is determined by the courage required to hold or express them. Intellectual courage is necessary for deep or controversial thinking, implying that the most valuable insights often come at a personal cost, demanding bravery to confront or articulate difficult truths. Quote 58. If life becomes hard to bear, we think of a change in our circumstances. But the most important and effective change, a change in our own attitude, hardly even occurs to us, and the resolution to take such a step is very difficult for us. Wittgenstein observes that people tend to focus on changing their external circumstances when life becomes challenging, overlooking the more powerful change they can make in their own mindset or behavior. He suggests that the real, transformative change comes from within, though it is often the hardest to initiate and maintain. Quote 59. I believe that one of the things Christianity says is that sound doctrines are all useless, that you have to change your life. Wittgenstein interprets Christianity as emphasizing the need for personal transformation over the mere following of doctrines. He argues that intellectual understanding or wisdom alone is insufficient. It is the change in one's life, the reorientation of values and actions, that truly matters. Christianity, for him, calls for a deeper, lived commitment rather than theoretical adherence. Quote 60. Wisdom is passionless, but faith by contrast is what Kierkegaard calls a passion. Wittgenstein contrasts wisdom, which he views as detached and unemotional, with faith, which Kierkegaard describes as filled with passion. For Wittgenstein, faith involves an intense personal commitment that engages the whole being, unlike wisdom, which remains cool and distant from the fervor of life's deeper struggles. Quote 61. The concept of the beautiful has done a lot of mischief in this connection too. Wittgenstein critiques the way the idea of beauty can lead to misunderstandings or distortions, particularly in art. He suggests that rigid notions of beauty may limit the range of what can be appreciated or understood, fostering an incomplete or even misguided appreciation of art and music. Quote 62. Madness need not be regarded as an illness. Why shouldn't it be seen as a sudden, more or less sudden, change of character? Wittgenstein offers a perspective on madness that deviates from the traditional view of it as a disease. Instead, he proposes that madness could be seen as a dramatic shift in a person's character, highlighting the fluid and unpredictable nature of human personality, rather than viewing it purely through the lens of pathology. Quote 63. Wisdom is cold, and to that extent stupid. Faith, on the other hand, is a passion. It might also be said, wisdom merely conceals life from you. Wisdom is like cold gray ash, covering up the glowing embers. Wittgenstein contrasts wisdom with faith, suggesting that wisdom, though often revered, is emotionally detached and can obscure the deeper, more passionate experiences of life. He uses the metaphor of cold ash to describe wisdom as something that covers and conceals, rather than reveals, the inner fire or vitality that faith, with its passionate intensity, might expose. Quote 64. A man's dreams are virtually never realized. Wittgenstein points out the gap between dreams and reality, suggesting that the hopes and visions people have rarely come to fruition. This reflects his understanding of life's unpredictability and the inherent limitations in trying to bring one's idealized visions into the actual world. Quote 65. The linings of my heart keep sticking together, and to open it, I should each time have to tear them apart. This powerful image reflects the emotional difficulty Wittgenstein experiences in opening himself up, both to others and perhaps to his own feelings. He compares his heart to something that constantly closes itself off, requiring painful effort to open again, highlighting the vulnerability and resistance involved in emotional exposure. Quote 66. It could only be by accident that a man's dreams about the future of philosophy, art, science should come true. What he sees in his dream is an extension of his own world, perhaps what he wishes, and perhaps not, but not reality. Wittgenstein suggests that dreams about the future, whether in philosophy, art, or science, are often personal projections rather than accurate predictions. He argues that such dreams are shaped by the dreamer's own experiences and desires, and that it is unlikely they will align with the actual course of events in reality. Quote 67. Taste makes adjustments. Giving birth is not its affair. Wittgenstein distinguishes between taste and creativity, emphasizing that taste refines and improves what already exists, but it does not generate new ideas or creations. This distinction reflects his belief that while taste can enhance, it cannot originate. True creativity lies beyond mere refinement. Quote 68. Every idea that costs a lot carries in its train a host of cheap ones. Among these are even some that are useful. Wittgenstein observes that significant, high-cost ideas often bring with them a range of smaller, less valuable thoughts. However, among these less significant ideas, there may still be some that prove useful. This highlights the process of intellectual exploration, where great insights are accompanied by many peripheral ideas, some of which may unexpectedly offer value. Quote 69. The book is full of life, not like a man, but like an ant-heap. Wittgenstein describes a book as teeming with activity and ideas, comparing it to an ant-heap, which is bustling with movement and life. This metaphor suggests that a work of literature or philosophy can contain layers of interconnected thoughts, each contributing to the complexity and vibrancy of the whole, even if it is not organized in a human or linear fashion. Quote 70. Science and industry and their progress might turn out to be the most enduring thing in the modern world. Perhaps science and industry, having caused infinite misery in the process, will unite the world, condense it into a single unit, though one in which peace is the last thing that will find a home. Wittgenstein reflects on the powerful role of science and industry in shaping the modern world. He suggests that while they may eventually unite humanity, it would come at a great cost, bringing misery and conflict rather than peace. This view reflects his skepticism about the ultimate benefits of technological and industrial progress, despite their transformative potential. Quote 71. Thoughts rise to the surface slowly, like bubbles, Sometimes it's as though you could see a thought, an idea, as an indistinct point far away on the horizon, and then it often approaches with astonishing swiftness. Wittgenstein uses a vivid metaphor to describe the way thoughts emerge in the mind. He likens them to bubbles slowly rising or distant points that suddenly become clear, illustrating how ideas can gradually form and then, at times, arrive with surprising clarity and speed. This captures the unpredictable and organic nature of thinking. Quote 72. Denying responsibility is not holding people responsible. Wittgenstein points out the consequences of denying personal responsibility. When we deny responsibility, we remove the moral obligation to hold individuals accountable for their actions, which can have profound ethical implications. This statement underscores the importance of acknowledging responsibility in fostering accountability. Quote 73. It strikes me that a religious belief could only be something like a passionate commitment to a system of reference. Hence, although it's belief, it's really a way of living, or a way of assessing life. Wittgenstein sees religious belief not merely as a set of doctrines, but as a deep, passionate commitment to a particular worldview. It shapes how one interprets and lives life, serving as a framework for understanding existence. This emphasizes the practical, lived dimension of faith, beyond intellectual acceptance. Quote 74. When you are philosophizing, you have to descend into primeval chaos and feel at home there. Wittgenstein suggests that true philosophy requires confronting the most basic, disordered elements of thought and reality. To engage deeply in philosophical inquiry, one must be comfortable navigating uncertainty and chaos, embracing the complexity and confusion inherent in the process of seeking understanding. Quote 75. The greatness of what a man writes depends on everything else he writes and does. Wittgenstein expresses the idea that the value of a person's work cannot be judged in isolation. The quality and significance of what one creates are shaped by the entirety of their thoughts, actions, and other writings, implying that greatness is holistic, tied to the coherence and depth of a life's work. Quote 76. Raisins may be the best part of a cake, but a bag of raisins is not better than a cake. This metaphor emphasizes that while certain elements of a larger work may stand out, they are not sufficient on their own. Wittgenstein uses the image of raisins and cake to illustrate that the whole, when thoughtfully composed, is greater than the sum of its parts. A coherent work is more valuable than isolated, impressive fragments. Quote 77. Architecture immortalizes and glorifies something. Hence, there can be no architecture where there is nothing to glorify. Wittgenstein emphasizes that architecture serves the purpose of immortalizing or elevating something significant. Without a meaningful subject to glorify or celebrate, true architecture cannot exist. This highlights his belief that art and design are rooted in deeper values and meanings that go beyond mere form or function. Quote 78. Strike a coin from every mistake. Wittgenstein suggests that mistakes should not be seen merely as failures, but as opportunities to learn and gain something valuable. Just as a coin is minted from raw metal, errors can be transformed into something positive, provided they are approached with the right mindset. Quote 79. Understanding and explaining a musical phrase. Sometimes the simplest explanation is a gesture. On another occasion, it might be a dance step, or words describing a dance. Wittgenstein reflects on the ways in which we understand and explain music, suggesting that music can be understood through various forms of expression, including gestures or even dance. He is pointing to the idea that understanding music goes beyond intellectual analysis and can be experienced and expressed in many different ways. Quote 80. The problems of life are insoluble on the surface and can only be solved in depth. They are insoluble in surface dimensions. Wittgenstein suggests that life's problems cannot be resolved by superficial means or shallow understanding. To truly address them, One must delve deeper, as these problems exist beyond the surface level of our experiences. This idea reflects his belief in the complexity of life and the need for profound engagement to find solutions. Quote 81. Even to have expressed a false thought boldly and clearly is already to have gained a great deal. Wittgenstein acknowledges that expressing an idea clearly, even if it turns out to be incorrect, is a valuable achievement. The process of articulating thoughts with clarity allows for progress, as it brings ideas into the open where they can be examined and refined. Quote 82. An honest religious thinker is like a tightrope walker. He almost looks as though he were walking on nothing but air. His support is the slenderest imaginable, and yet it really is possible to walk on it. Wittgenstein compares the religious thinker to a tightrope walker, illustrating the delicate and precarious nature of faith. Though it may seem as though there is little to support such beliefs, they are nonetheless possible to maintain with conviction. This metaphor underscores the fragility and strength of faith simultaneously. Quote 83. If someone can believe in God with complete certainty, why not in other minds? Wittgenstein raises the question of why belief in God, often based on faith and certainty, is considered acceptable, while belief in the existence of other minds, also something we cannot directly experience, is sometimes questioned. He points to the parallel between these two kinds of belief, both of which require a leap of trust beyond direct evidence. Quote 84. Tradition is not something a man can learn, not a thread he can pick up when he feels like it, any more than a man can choose his own ancestors. Wittgenstein argues that tradition is not something one can simply adopt or reject at will. Like ancestry, it is an inherent part of one's identity, something passed down and lived, rather than something learned superficially. Tradition is deeply rooted in culture and personal history, not a matter of preference. Quote 85. There is a pathos peculiar to the man who is happily in love, as well as to the one who is unhappily in love. Wittgenstein points out that both happiness and unhappiness in love come with their own distinct emotional intensity or pathos. Whether one is fulfilled or suffering, the emotional experience of love is profound and shapes one's state of being in unique ways. The pathos in both states captures the depth of human emotions tied to love. Quote 86. Nearly all my writings are private conversations with myself, things that I say to myself tête-à-tête. Wittgenstein reveals that much of his writing is deeply personal, almost like a dialogue with himself. He views his philosophical reflections as internal conversations, intimate and introspective. This emphasizes the solitary, contemplative nature of his intellectual work, where the audience is often secondary to his own self-exploration. Quote 87. Ambition is the death of thought. Wittgenstein suggests that excessive ambition can hinder true thinking. When one's focus is on achieving external success or recognition, the quality of thought may suffer, as genuine intellectual engagement requires freedom from such distractions. He sees ambition as a barrier to pure contemplation and philosophical inquiry. Quote 88. Humor is not a mood, but a way of looking at the world. Wittgenstein views humor as a fundamental perspective on life, rather than just an emotional state. It reflects a deeper worldview, shaping how people interpret and respond to the world around them. This suggests that humor is more profound than simply feeling good or being amused. It is an essential part of one's approach to existence. Quote 89. In the sphere of the mind, someone's project cannot usually be continued by anyone else, nor should it be. These thoughts will fertilize the soil for a new sowing. Wittgenstein observes that intellectual or philosophical work is often deeply personal and cannot easily be carried on by others. Each individual's project is unique, and while it may not be directly continued, it can inspire new ideas and developments in others. This reflects his belief in the organic and evolving nature of intellectual progress. Quote 90. You have to accept the faults in your own style, almost like the blemishes in your own face. Wittgenstein highlights the importance of embracing personal imperfections, not just in appearance, but also in one's expression and thought. Just as one learns to live with physical imperfections, it is essential to accept the inherent flaws in personal style, both in writing and in broader forms of communication. Quote 91. Tender expression in music. It isn't to be characterized in terms of degrees of loudness or tempo, any more than a tender facial expression can be described in terms of the distribution of matter in space. Wittgenstein draws a parallel between the emotional depth in music and facial expressions, emphasizing that the tenderness in music cannot be reduced to technical terms like volume or speed. It reflects a profound, intangible quality that transcends measurable characteristics, much like the emotions expressed on a person's face. Quote 92. God's essence is supposed to guarantee his existence. What this really means is that what is here at issue is not the existence of something. Wittgenstein questions the idea that God's essence inherently proves his existence. He suggests that this line of thinking moves beyond the traditional notion of existence, implying that God's nature cannot be compared to the existence of ordinary things in the world. This reflects his exploration of how language and concepts shape our understanding of divine matters. Quote 93. Culture is an observance, or at least it presupposes an observance. Wittgenstein describes culture as something that involves a set of practices or rituals, indicating that culture is rooted in specific behaviors and traditions. It is not merely an abstract concept, but is tied to the observance of customs, values, and shared ways of life that give culture its substance. Quote 94. The reason why I cannot understand Shakespeare is that I want to find symmetry in all this asymmetry. Wittgenstein reflects on his difficulty in appreciating Shakespeare's work, suggesting that it is because he seeks order and symmetry in what he perceives as chaotic. This desire for structure prevents him from fully engaging with Shakespeare's seemingly unstructured brilliance, illustrating the tension between intellectual expectations and artistic expression. Quote 95. Philosophy hasn't made any progress? If somebody scratches the spot where he has an itch, do we have to see some progress? Wittgenstein challenges the idea that philosophy must demonstrate visible progress. He compares philosophical inquiry to scratching an itch, suggesting that the act itself can be meaningful without necessarily producing tangible results. This emphasizes the ongoing, sometimes cyclical nature of philosophical thought, where the process is valuable even without clear advancement. Culture and Value by Ludwig Wittgenstein leaves readers with a poignant reflection on the nuanced relationship between culture, philosophy, and the self. Through fragmented yet profound observations, Wittgenstein challenges conventional understanding of truth, urging an introspective approach that considers the limitations of language in expressing human experience. His work suggests that true insight lies not in rigid doctrine, but in the continuous questioning and re-evaluation of one's values. As Wittgenstein's words linger, readers are encouraged to view culture as both a guiding structure and a challenge, inviting deeper contemplation of life's moral and existential questions.
Curious to dive into the mind of Ludwig Wittgenstein? With StudyLab Pro's book GPT, it's possible. Ask questions, explore themes, and discover the depths of culture and value in an entirely new way. Start your conversation now by clicking on our logo. And if you're hungry for more educational content, subscribe to our channel to keep discovering, learning, and growing. Want more than just videos? Click on our logo now to join us on our platform for multiple choice tests, in-depth content, and tools to help you ace your studies. Get started now.